majority of people doubt us. They don't think it's going to happen. We have the best record in football. Now we're all of a sudden not good enough. These playoffs have evolved into a who gets less respect battle. Neither one of them was a starting quarterback when the season opened. Let's get this job done, and we shock the world again. Let's go! It's all done! I told them to do everything I've done, right? You can't leave the Minneapolis Miracle! He has pressure on him. He has to win. They are penetrating the seemingly impenetrable. This is everything that we work for. Everything we dream up. It's not what you know. It's what you can prove.
Let's go, Vikes! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Viking Spin. I'm your host, Jason, and here we are. It's the NFC Championship Game coming up between the Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. After the Minneapolis Miracle, of course, which put the Vikings into position now to play this game at Philadelphia, and the winner goes to the Super Bowl. It's been just amazing, this run so far that the Vikings have been on. And we've got 2 more games to go here. So let's get right to it. Championship game. The Vikings coming in with an identical record as the Eagles, both 14-3 after 13-3 regular seasons, and both teams advancing in the divisional playoff round. Of course, the Vikings beating the Saints 29-24, and the Eagles beating the Falcons 15-10. Winner goes to the Super Bowl, as we mentioned. And so let's get to it as far as the some of the headlines here for team news. The Vikings this week, they waived offensive tackle Storm Norton from the practice squad and signed tight end Nick Truesdell to the practice squad. That's because probably because Kyle Carter, who was waived last week when the Vikings activated Sam Bradford, he can't be cleared of waivers until after January 23rd. So that's something to keep an eye on there. Should the Vikings advance, we'll see what happens with Carter going forward, if he'll be brought back to the practice squad at that point. Also in team news this week, Mike Zimmer was mum again to the media on who the backup quarterback will be going into this game. It's likely Sam Bradford again. That would be my guess, as it was last week. But we'll find out for sure on Sunday. For the Eagles, really, the storylines in this game for them, and we'll get to the injury reports, which we'll have more about that. But it's that, Nick Foles is filling in for Carson Wentz. Wentz was having an MVP-like season at quarterback for Philadelphia. Nick Foles has taken over since and kind of been a game manager. He's been able to guide the Eagles to victory over the Falcons in the playoffs. It wasn't a world-beating performance. The offense has stalled for the Eagles, but their defense has kept them going. But they're going to get a big test, of course, here against the Vikings. Also, the Eagles had a significant loss. They lost their left tackle, Jason Peters. Vaitai is filling in for Peters, and he's allowed 9 sacks of Eagles quarterbacks already. So that's going to be a significant matchup that we're going to look at as well when we dive into the individual matchups. We'll take a look at him going up against Everson Griffin. As far as the team rankings go, this is how the teams ended the regular season. Keep in mind Philadelphia's rankings on offense. A lot of it was Carson Wentz because he was healthy for most of the season. So let's keep that in mind when we're listening to these. But let's get to it. The offense, total offensive yards, the Vikings ranked 11th, the Eagles ranked 7th. Total offensive points, the Vikings ranked 10th, the Eagles ranked 3rd. Total pass offense, the Vikings ranked 11th overall, and Philadelphia ranked 13th overall. Total rushing offense, the Vikings ranked 7th, and the Eagles ranked 3rd overall. However, this is an interesting stat to point out. Since Nick Foles took over at quarterback for the Eagles after Wentz went down, the Eagles have only been averaging 275 yards of offense per game. If you were to put that over a 16-game season, they would be dead last in the league on offense. So this offense has really suffered since Wentz went down. Foles has just not been an adequate replacement, and the offense has taken a major step back since he's been in as the quarterback. They haven't not had the Case Keenum effect as far as Nick Foles is concerned. Now, he's not a terrible quarterback. He's a game manager, but Carson Wentz was a big-time playmaker, so it's a significant difference here. But the defense, that's what really hasn't changed too much. The defensive rankings here, overall, the Vikings, of course, ranked first overall in the NFL in yards allowed. The Eagles ranked fourth. Total defense points, the Vikings ranked first in the league. Again, in that category, the Eagles ranked fourth in that category. Total pass defense, here's where there's a significant difference. The Vikings ranked second overall in pass defense. The Eagles struggled and ranked 17th against the pass. They were a little bit, average to below average against the pass. Our total rush defense, the Vikings ranked second. The Eagles ranked number one. That's their strong suit on defense, is their ability to stop the run. Now, under the injury reports, of course, for this week's injury report, the Vikings have defensive tackle, rotational tackle, Shamar Stephen is out, so Jaleel Johnson will likely get some rotational reps in his absence. Excuse me. Tom Johnson is the starter at 3 technique, and he'll probably play a few more snaps to make up for it. But expect to see Vikings rookie Jaleel Johnson stepping up his role this week. And as far as the questionable Vikings on the report, there are 3. Adam Thielen, Mackenzie Alexander, and Andrew Sendejo. But some good news, Adam Thielen is expected to play, as well as Sendejo. Mike Zimmer is very optimistic about that. Thielen practiced all week, and Sendejo was a full participant in practice on today, which is Friday. So it looks like both of those guys are going to be a go for Sunday. For the Eagles, middle linebacker Donnell Ellerbe is questionable. Now, Ellerbe, keep in mind, is a backup middle linebacker. Jordan Hicks, the starting middle linebacker for the Eagles, was lost in the middle of the season. So for any reason Ellerbe can't go, they would be down to a third-string middle linebacker. So that's something to watch there. As far as injured reserve goes, of course, we know the Vikings, the significant ones there, Dalvin Cook, Kevin McDermott, Nick Easton, Blake Bell. The Eagles, significant IRs, Carson Wentz and Jason Peters, as we mentioned before. Jordan Hicks, the middle linebacker. Earlier in the year, they lost their kicker, Sturgis, and running back return specialist, Darren Sproles. The longtime veteran running back was lost. So those are the things that are going to be different from maybe when you saw the rosters come out for week 1. Now, getting on to the individual matchups here. This is going to be, with the rest of the players, left over here for the Vikings. I'm taking a look at the Vikings offense versus the Philadelphia defense, and I think that this is going to be a really favorable matchup here for the Vikings in terms of the wide receivers versus the Eagles defensive backs. The Eagles, and a lot of times the Eagles will, they even have to play off-cover zone because they don't have the greatest guys to come up and play press man. But it's Diggs and Thielen on the outside against Jalen Mills, who's given up 9 touchdowns on the season. One of the poorest ranked starting cornerbacks in the league. And then they also have Darby. That's the other starting cornerback, along with Patrick Robinson as the nickel, and Sidney Jones, who's just recently come back, the rookie, would be the dime back. I see some big time advantages for the Vikings. Diggs versus Mills. They're probably going to put Darby on Thielen, and I think at times Patrick Robinson, who will play the slot, will wind up covering those guys depending on what the Vikings do in the slot, whether they put Thielen there, Diggs right, depending on the matchups. But I think the Vikings have a significant talent advantage there. Their wide receiver group versus the Eagles DB group there on the corners. I look a big factor for the Vikings is going to be getting Jerick McKinnon out in space against this Philadelphia defense. That could be where the Vikings have the most success. Of course, they'll be mixing in Latavius Murray with some quick hitting runs too. Against that front seven, the Eagles have a very good and deep defensive line, led by Fletcher Cox, the man in the middle. Brandon Graham on the outside leads them with 9 sacks. He's a disruptive force. Vinny Curry. They also have Tim Jernigan is another defensive tackle they have, and then they bring in some guys off the bench like Chris Long, that comes in, and then they also have Barnett that comes in off the bench at defensive end. So they rotate a lot of guys in and out a lot like the Vikings do to try to keep their D-line fresh. Malcolm Jenkins, their safety, comes in. He comes up and plays in the box a lot. They do a lot of single high looks. Now, a good matchup for the Vikings here, I think, will be Kyle Rudolph against the linebackers and safeties of Philadelphia. The tallest player out of that bunch of the linebackers and safeties is 6'2". Nigel Bradham, the linebacker. Kyle Rudolph, of course, 6'6". I don't see anyone that could match up with him on that Philly defense. So Rudolph could be a factor here in the passing game, and especially in the red zone. Keenum in the offensive line. I expect that they're going to use guys like C.J. Ham, David Morgan, Kyle Rudolph, the running backs, Aviante Collins, lining up and chipping the Philadelphia D-line rotation to give Case Keenum a little bit more time. Keenum is, of course, good at using his mobility to avoid pass rush and extend plays. The Vikings defense versus the Philadelphia offense. Some key matchups here. I think the Vikings will have a decided advantage with Emerson Griffin going up against Vaitai at left tackle. He's the replacement for Jason Peters. He's given up a lot of sacks, a lot of pressures. So I think the Vikings can really exploit that matchup with Emerson Griffin. The Eagles will probably try to get the ball out as quick as they can. That, of course, does limit what you can do in the downfield passing game when you're sort of limited to the short game. But we'll see how the Eagles react to that. Xavier Rhodes will be on Alshon Jeffrey. That's a matchup for the ages. We saw that for years when Alshon Jeffrey was a member of the Chicago Bears. That's going to be a big-time physical matchup. Rhodes stressed the importance of being aggressive and physical with Jeffrey at the line of scrimmage, especially since he's going to be probably doing a lot of short, quick routes with Foles trying to get the ball out quick. Jay Ajayi, Wendell Smallwood, and Corey Clement. Smallwood and Clement are more of their scat backs. Ajayi is also effective in the screen game. Those guys, will be probably followed by Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. Now, they also, in this game, Zach Ernst is a big matchup. Harrison Smith will probably shadow him a little bit. And, of course, the tandem there of LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi and running behind the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Those guys are bruising running backs. They're plotters. They don't really run well outside. So the Vikings would be good to jam the middle and force them to go east and west instead of north and south. That'll be an interesting battle with Linval Joseph up front and the Vikings front seven and Harrison Smith coming down in the box. Nick Foles versus Harrison Smith and Mike Zimmer. We know Smith does a lot of disguising, causes a lot of thinking to go on with the opposing quarterback. You don't know what he's going to do. Is he coming? Is he not? Is he bluffing? That should be a great head game to watch between Zimmer, Smith, and Foles. Special teams, of course, we've got our guys, Kai Forbath, who was very clutch last week. Brian Quigley, one of the better punters that we have. Marcus Sherrills will be returning kicks and punts. And Jeff Overbaugh is the long snapper. For Philadelphia, they have Elliott, who replaced Sturgis and has been solid this season for the Eagles. Did have a miss last week, though, in the playoffs, interestingly enough, after a very solid regular season. But it didn't wind up costing them in that game. But it could cost them in this game, because we'll see how much points may be at a premium here. If the Vikings, I think, can score more than 10 points that the Falcons did, my opinion, if the Vikings can score 20, I don't think the Eagles can match that. So field goal kicking will be important in this game for sure. They got their punter Jones, kick returner, punt returner Barner, long snapper Lovato. This is a good all-around Eagles team on special teams, just like the Vikings are. I would say that the keys to the Vikings' victory here in this ball game is definitely going to be getting the running backs in space. That looks to be one of the better ways to go up against this Eagles defense. And of course the screen, because the Eagles have a pretty intense pass rush. They don't have to blitz a lot because they get pressure with the front four, but those front four, they really like to get up the field. Very, very aggressive, very quick twitch, and a good way to negate that is the screen game. And of course, it's also effective against the blitz should Jim Schwartz bring the blitz. I think the quick passing game is a good way to beat this team as well, because they do so much off coverage, the off-man coverage with these cushions. That's how a team like the Giants was very successful against the Eagles defense. Actually, if you go on to dailynorseman.com and ways to beat the Eagles defense, there's a very good article that explains all that there with some videos to back it up, showing how the Giants made those drives. It's also got some plays that the Vikings ran that are similar that would work well in those situations. I think it's going to be very important to establish the run, set the play action shots deep, because eventually you'll force those corners to come up. They've got to play a situation where they're close to the receiver at the line of scrimmage. You've got Diggs and Keenan for secondary. Try to isolate the running back or wide receiver. We're going to play that Jenkins is a really good box defender, good left defender. In the safety position, not great in one-on-one coverage. Not really good in man coverage. But if you can get him isolated, that's a matchup the Vikings can take advantage of. I think giving Rashad Hill some help over there on the right side now and then would be a good idea with some chips and things like that. Of course, limit the penalties and win the turnover battle. You don't want to beat yourselves. I think the Vikings-Saints game wouldn't have even been close if the Vikings hadn't had a couple of mistakes to let the Saints back in the game. But the Vikings can limit those. I think they'll win this game easily, because I don't think the Eagles are as strong of a team as the Saints are. Getting pressure on Nick Foles will be key. His passer rating drops significantly when he has to throw under pressure. So I do expect to see some blitzes dialed up from time to time. The Vikings should also be able to get some pressure as well with their front four, which is definitely ideal. But you may see some five-man pressures there as well, which are very effective. Jam the middle, of course, we talked about that a little bit. Force the Eagles running backs outside. These guys are plotters. They're not fast. They are much better north and south runners than they are east and west. And play man-to-man against the corners. Some bump and run to disrupt the quick rhythm timing routes that Foles is going to try to hit. And now he does a lot of RPOs, which are run-pass options, that he did a lot in the Chip Kelly system that kind of brought that back to get him to feel a little bit more comfortable. But the thing to remember is Foles is not going to run. He's not Carson Wentz. He's not going to take off down the field. So really what you're looking for there when you're reacting is, did he hand the ball off, or is he still got to throw it? You're not really thinking about, is Nick Foles going to run the ball like a Cam Newton or even a Carson Wentz might. So, but that's how I see the game plan. That the Vikings are probably going to have, just from observing the Eagles and watching some film on them and studying them and what they do. That's definitely what I expect. Of course, another storyline for this game, you've got a lot of connections here. Michael Kendricks is a linebacker, starting linebacker for the Eagles. Of course, we've got Eric Kendricks here with the Vikings. They're brothers playing in the city of brotherly love, but they haven't had much brotherly love this week. Neither player has talked to each other at all this week. Definitely a lot riding on the line in this game, so understandably so. But this is it. This is the NFC Championship game, folks. This is for the right to bring it home. Can the Vikings bring it home to Minnesota for the Super Bowl by getting a win in Philadelphia? I think they can. Let's all go out. Anybody who prayed on Sunday for the Minneapolis Miracle and God brought it to us, try to go to church on Sunday or say a prayer at home, just giving thanks to the Lord for that one, because like I said in the last podcast, that was definitely divine intervention. But I think the Vikings, if they just go and play their game like they know how, and take care of the football and do the things that got them to this point, they'll come away a winner in Philadelphia, and we will bring it home for the Super Bowl in Minneapolis on February 4th. So that's all I have for you guys for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Viking Spin. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and of course subscribe here on YouTube. So long.